Carrie, did any of the board members say they cannot make it?
No, I haven't heard. Sorry.
Hi, Diana. Hi, Julie.
Hi.
Hi, Billy.
Hi, can you read me?
Yeah, I can hear you, and Alapaki.
And I see Diana
Yeah.
Hi, Billy.
and Julie.
So we're waiting for Greg, Doug, and Keahi. There's Greg. Hey, Greg.
Hi. Had trouble finding the link, I'm sorry.
So we're waiting for Doug and Keahi.
Okay. I never heard from Kiahi. I'm assuming he's able to join us.
Yeah, I didn't hear from him either.
Okay.
And I'm not sure, I didn't hear from Shane that he was not coming.
Okay.
Hi, Doug.
Hi. Just switching from the Subaru channel. Lovely.
Hi, Bonnie. So there's 6 of us. Keahi's not here. But we have quorum.
Yeah.
So, and it is now 5:04. If everyone's all right, I would like to start the meeting.
Sure.
Okay, so I will call the meeting to order. It is now 5:04 p.m. and present, you can see on the screen. I will start. Wait, I just gotta check. I will start by saying that there were no public comments, so we can move on to the minutes of the prior meeting. So there were actually two sets of minutes that had gone out. One for the January 12th meeting, which needed to be amended based on some incorrect content. So that was circulated, and we also have the minutes of the February 2nd meeting. So let's start with the January 12th meeting. Are there any changes or corrections to the minutes that were circulated?
No, I approve the changes that were made based on my recommendations and Diana's recommendations.
Okay, so are you making a motion, Julie?
Yeah, and to accept the minutes as,
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Diana. We have a motion and a second to approve the January 12th minutes as submitted. Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Or raise your hand, aye. Any opposed? Minutes approved. So Billy, since I didn't hear from you, I'm assuming you're okay.
Yeah, I'm continue to have trouble trying to unmute.
Oh, okay, well, no, you were unmuted. Now you're muted. But we see no video. Moving on, were there any corrections or changes to the February 2nd minutes that were circulated?
Yeah, I was, and I'm sorry I didn't do this earlier because I had sent that written form of the charge language. So the charge language, I'm, lawyer stickler with having it be exactly what I read. So there were some changes. So I'd like to get that changed to be exactly as I read it. So the minutes are, one moment. I'm having some trouble. Yeah, I'm not opening it. So for the charge language, do you want me to read it out or do you want me to send it in writing again? I can send it in writing again.
Well, if
Yeah.
you read it out and we accept it, we can accept the minutes as amended.
With
which
the
are amended.
changes,
Yeah.
correct.
Okay. All right. So for number 1 of the charge, the word to was in the front, to consider, because it's two in each one. For number 2, the word to is in front. And then at the end where it says, and the university might be improved, the actual word I read was may be improved. Then for number 3, to consider whether and then CMP required, because that's what I read. And then we had discussion afterward about whether or not it was required by the CMP. But what I read is CMP required, Hawaiian Cultural Committee of the Maunakea Management Board. So CMP required should be inserted before the word Hawaiian, and of the Maunakea Management Board should be inserted before the word should. And so it would read, the CMP required Hawaiian Cultural Committee of the Maunakea Management Board should be started or restored. And I think there was some discussion and you folks helped me to understand that it's not clear whether in the CMP that the Hawaiian Cultural Committee was required. Then in number 4, the word to at the front, and report to Maunakea Management Board on, and then the word these before matters, and then the words for determination on before appropriate action. And then instead of the word to, it should be to be taken, if any, is what I read. So I can send this with highlighted language and strikeout language to show what exactly I read, and I'd be happy to send that to Roberta.
Okay, can you send it to Greg and myself?
Absolutely.
He'll get it to Carrie.
Okay, I will do that.
Is there any discussion among the members with those clarifications? So the minutes for the February 2nd meeting will be amended to include Diana's comments that she just read. Is there any discussion?
I move to accept.
Okay, Greg, move to accept. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Diana. Diana, second the motion. Any more discussion? Yes, Diana. Oh,
No, I
okay.
thought you were
All
calling
those
for
in
it.
favor, say aye or raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? Minutes of the February 2nd meeting have been approved as amended. Okay, moving along, the next item. Oh shucks, I lost my agenda. Excuse me. Okay, the next item is Kahukumana report. I did not get anything from Shane. Greg, by chance, did you get anything?
No, I did not. I think the only thing to report would have been their review of the CSO site decommissioning plan, which they approved and which we'll be covering later on in the meeting.
Okay. All right. And then the next item is Executive Director's report.
Okay, thank you. Aloha, everybody. I'll start off with just sort of recapping once again, January 22nd, I, on behalf of the university, provided our annual report to the Board of Land and Natural Resources. I know you folks are all aware of that. There hasn't been no follow-up since then, other than I have received some positive input that it was received well. But otherwise, no other follow-up from that. Second item I have to update you folks on is House Resolution 33 and House Concurrent Resolution 41. As you know, these were the resolutions introduced by Senator Tarnas and heard by the Joint Committee on Land and Water and Judiciary and Hawaiian Affairs in the House last week. This is to convene a working group to look at alternative governance structures for Mauna Kea. The resolutions passed out of committee. I don't believe that they are assigned to any other committees, so I'm assuming they will just move on to full House vote. To our knowledge, there still does not appear to be support on the Senate side for a concurrent resolution, either similar to or identical to HR 33 and HCR 41. It will probably stand as, assuming it passes at on the House side, it will stand as a House resolution only. But it is our understanding that Speaker Psyche could move forward with convening this working group, even if it doesn't pass or there is no concurrent support on the Senate side. One unknown question is how this group would be resourced and funded. Resolutions on their own do not authorize expenditure of funds, state funds or legislative funds, authorized funds. So I'm not exactly sure how this working group, once stood up, would move forward. assuming that it is stood up. I did share with you folks the university's testimony, which I presented on behalf of the university, in which we raised several concerns, though we did state our support of the intent of the resolution, which is really to try to bring people together to have a productive civil conversation about management and governance of Mauna Kea going forward. Our testimony covered basically 3 points. One was the lack of a stated purpose of any alternatives recommended by this working group, essentially trying to make the point that it's unclear what problem or aspiration a recommendation coming out of this group is intended to resolve. Second point that we made was that we believe that the resolutions themselves were based primarily on one assessment or evaluation of university's management, and that is the independent review completed by Ku'iwalu, which we all have reviewed and had discussions about. We believe and raised in our testimony that there are several other sources of information that this working group should be reviewing and considering before they make any recommendations. And then the third issue that we raised had to do with just basically the committee composition itself, lack of what we felt was enough representation from the Big Island, as well as some sense of how community, quote unquote, members of the committee would be selected. I think a lot of those points were reinforced by others who testified and provided submitted testimony, even though people either opposed or supported or just commented on the resolutions. It seemed like we were all speaking to the same issues and the same concerns about the resolutions themselves. Both as a result, as well as because of the introduction of these resolutions, I did a series of community briefings with a variety of different stakeholder groups. I did meet with all 4 congressional delegations and provided them an overview not only of our annual report to the BLNR, but specifically some of our concerns, university's concerns about the resolutions themselves. I did meet with Speaker Saiki, Representative Tarnas, and Nakashima to brief them on the same. I met with the Senate Majority Caucus. As some of you know, I also, along with David Lasner, provided a webinar, conducted a webinar with Hawaii Business Roundtable. And I have actually a couple more sessions coming up. We do have a meeting, Chancellor Irwin and I have a meeting with Mayor Roth on the 9th. So we will continue to try to share our university's perspectives and provide the fuller background on our management so that a broader range of people and stakeholders understand just what all is involved in managing the mountain. Next item is just sort of a quick update on where we are with the master plan.
Sorry, can I interrupt you for a second?
Sure.
You mentioned groups that community groups you met with. Could you rattle us some of those names off or groups?
I'd have to go pull up my list, but let's see. Well, Hawaii Business Roundtable is one of them. I have talked individually to select certain members of Pueo. I have talked to Imua TMT. we have, I'll get into this later in the update on the master plan. We actually have an outreach that we've made to Antipua Kanahele. That hasn't come into fruition yet. I have talked to Hawaii Island Economic Development Board, provided a brief update to HLPC, Hawaii Leeward Planning Conference. Those are some of those off the top of my head.
Thank you. So that's a long list of business groups.
Mhm.
I'd be more concerned about extending those to community organizations as well.
Yeah, one of the challenges, as we pointed out in our testimony, has been that attempts to reach out to who I'll just say our critics are often not successful. I mean, they're just not. We actually we're in the process of, this doesn't have to do specifically to HR 33 and HCR 41, but we actually were in the process of securing a meeting with OHA regarding the master plan. And after the announcement of this resolution and the Speaker Psyche's intent, that got put on the shelf. So it's going to be even more difficult at this point, in our view, to engage with the broader community, particularly our critics, who we would like to sit down with, because at this point they have no reason to meet with us. At least that's my perspective of that.
Thank you.
Any other questions on this particular item before I move on? Okay. So regarding the master plan, the outreach that we've been doing is winding down. As I indicated, we have reached out to requesting a meeting with Antipua Kanahele. We have not received a response yet. We have reached out to OHA, and as I indicated, that has been put on the shelf for now. I'm hopeful that we will be able to sit down with them. We have been able to meet with selected members of the UH Manoa and Hilo faculty who have provided some input on the master plan, but have been concerned about providing too much input because of the appearance that by doing so they may be tacitly supporting either university or TMT or astronomy or whatnot. But we have been able to get some input on the master plan from those groups. And then we met with a whole bunch of others. We've met with a whole bunch of others as well, including the observatories and business groups and whatnot. I would say that there are a couple of areas that have emerged as sensitive issues, or issues that we're going to have to roll up our sleeves on, we meaning the university, regarding the master plan. These are not unexpected or surprise. One issue is a sense that the plan remains unbalanced, that it remains astronomy centric still. And we're trying to address that in several different ways. One of the ways is by reworking our goals as stated in the master plan. And we'll be adding, as an example, we'll be adding a goal specific to education, which is intended to address our interests of expanding our educational programming on Mauna Kea beyond astronomy. There is a need in that regard to articulate a clearer vision for what that programming looks and feels like. We're not at a point where we can get into specifics, but I think we can talk about some aspirations of what that program would need to look like, especially from a cultural perspective. Another issue that is that we knew was going to be very sensitive has to do with the reuse of recycling of astronomy sites for future astronomy uses. So as you know, we are committed to decommissioning 5 sites as per the TMT CDUP. 3 of those sites have been noted as not being used for astronomy in the future. The other 2 sites, that was not necessary, that was not part of the condition. But the idea of using a decommissioned site in the future, as far out as it may be, for a future astronomy use, as long as we don't exceed 9 observatories on the Mauna, that issue is proven to be of interest to a lot of people. So that's another area that we'll be needing to revise the plan on. And then there has been a request that the plan also acknowledge both the past and recent history around Mauna Kea, and to acknowledge that this plan, which is, we need and is required, is being developed in the context of a contemporary context where there are significant concerns about the future for astronomy, much less the future concerns, significant concerns about TMT, much less the future of astronomy. And so there's been a desire, expressed desire by some groups for us to include some acknowledgement of that in the plan. So we are working on that as well. Let me go ahead and stop and see if there's any questions about the master plan update. Yeah.
I was just wondering, Greg, have you gotten feedback from the Hawaiian Civic Clubs?
Actually, no, we have not.
Have they been approached or asked?
Through individuals, not through key leaders, but yeah.
So it's going to be interesting. If you're not getting any feedback, then how do you include it in a report, right?
It's one of our challenges. Yeah. And that's what makes the resolutions themselves, just added another layer of complexity onto them.
If I could, I just want to emphasize that I agree with Greg that there's no incentive for the community that is opposed to TMT. There's no incentive to engage with us right now. And that's the only issue of importance to them. So the future management of Mauna Kea, and those are just platforms to debate TMT. And until that's settled, it's going to be very hard to have a meaningful engagement process. That's my 2 cents. And from the folks I'm talking to, the issue is singular.
I should point out that our consultants, PSI, have made a concerted effort to make sure that this outreach is not balanced just towards those who support astronomy or UH or TMT. In fact, initially, or as the process unfolded, I requested that they meet with certain groups And they were I don't want to say reluctant, but they felt that it was already unweighted towards input from those who are supportive of us, and it's mostly because there are other groups who we would like to meet with who just have not responded. So it's a challenging situation, no doubt.
So I understand what what Alapaki, you and Greg are saying about they don't feel they need to participate, but does that mean that the university is just going to wait then and not move forward with the master plan? I mean, you kind of, I don't understand. And then I guess the next question is who's gonna make that decision, I guess, right? If you're saying it's, TMT or not, then what, are we waiting for the governor? Who's gonna make that call?
Well, in terms of who's going to make the call about moving forward with the work on the master plan, I mean, that's our choice, and we're going to continue. But relative to the larger concerns for many of our critics, I mean, I don't know what's going to come out of Speaker Psyche's resolution and effort, if anything. But otherwise, I think it would be the governor.
I don't think there's any need or reason to wait, but to Julie's original question, we have to find a way to accurately document who we've reached out to. Sure. And the other point that Greg's making is that a lot of these are, so like for the civic clubs, there's a little bit of politics to formally requesting response from those groups as well. So I do think that we're not being given much choice, where we have to make official requests to organizations and note the lack of response. The political avenue of trying to get individuals to help us broker conversations that we can't, right, won't suffice, to your point, Roberta, in a report, right, that we document.
Well, I think you end up only being able to acknowledge there was no response, and then you have the responses, right? So yeah, it's problematic, but unless you're going to wait forever, you have to make a decision whether you're going to move forward or not. And I guess I think what you're doing, right, moving forward and making taking copious notes on who's replying, who's not, and making sure that you're reaching out in the way, whatever protocol each of these different groups requires. I mean, I think that's the best you can do. And the fact that they don't reply is not anything within any of our control.
I mean, just yesterday, we did get a reply from one group that we've been waiting on, and what we were told was internally they can't come to an agreement about whether they want to meet with us. So at this point, they won't sit down with us. So. And that was a group that we've been waiting on for a couple of weeks now to hear back from.
But you did reach out. You can document. This is the response.
Yep.
And,
Yep.
At some point, you either keep waiting or you decide to move forward. So, I just wanted to comment that I think you're doing as much as you can.
Oh, I appreciate that. We will continue to do even more because it's important. I know the observatories are doing their own as well. So we all need to do this. Any other questions on the master plan update? There are a couple of other items I wanted to update you folks on. Okay. Decommissioning. We're going to hear from the CSO folks in a bit, so I won't get into that. But I will point out that the site decommissioning plan was approved by Kahukumana, and we apologize for the late memo that we just sent, but we just finalized our review with the Environment Committee today, and so they've approved it as well. We are awaiting, and I believe it's come, no, actually, I take it back. We have received a draft of the environmental assessment from CSO. So that's the next step, the next thing that we'll be looking at. So that, we just received that last week, and so we're going to be taking a look at that now. For Hoku'Kea, we have received both a draft of the site decommissioning plan as well as the environmental assessment. And our facilities group who is helping us with that project is doing kind of a technical review right now of those two documents before it goes out to a broader group of those within the UH for our review. So that process continues to move on as well. I'm happy to report. The only other thing, a couple of other things, Environment Committee, we do have a meeting with the Environment Committee on Thursday. And this will be the meeting in which we will discuss how we want to organize and what they see their purpose as, what we see their purpose as, membership and all those things. So at our next Maunakea Management Board meeting, the plan is to bring back a charter along with some, I won't call them bylaws at this point, but at least some committee guidelines in terms of how they will structure and operate. On the matter of the cesspools that we are in the process of closing, we finally have now what we think is a final engineering design plan for the one closure at the maintenance facility at Halepohaku. This was the one that was holding us up. So the project proposal describing the process for closing all 4 cesspools is being prepared now. And that will be the next thing that'll come to this committee, hopefully in the next 60 days. Well, it'll go to Environment Committee and Kahukumana first, but hopefully in the next 60 days. The plan is to have those that work completed by the end of this year. On the recruitment for the Director of Stewardship Programs, there was a little hitch with HR and how the posting was actually posted. We've corrected that. So it is a continuous recruitment. I am organizing needing to organize the EEO training that the screening committee needs to go through before we can start reviewing the applications. At last count, I was told that there were 10 applications that have been submitted. I don't know who they are. And then the last thing I'll say, so related to some of the recent accidents on the Mauna that we've heard about. We had a meeting with risk management. We, meaning a whole bunch of us from our CMS staff, met with risk management in the Office of General Counsel to talk about different things that we need to focus on in terms of educating as well as warning the public of the dangers when they go up to the Mauna and engage in certain activities. And what we have decided we're going to focus on, which I think is a much needed program, is we're going to be looking at our signage through up and down the Mauna, particularly as it relates now to needing to advise people that we do have administrative rules that prohibit certain activities in certain areas and that sort of thing. So Stuart Hunter and Scotty Paiva will be heading a committee. They're organizing an internal committee for us to begin looking at revamping our signage program so that we can appropriately ensure that we have exercise our duty to warn the public about the dangers when they do go up there. The second piece to the signage program will be more the interpretive component, which we'll get to after we address this this first phase, which will focus on helping us mitigate risk management. Eventually, that program will come to this committee for review as well. Any questions on that? Concludes my report, by the way. So any questions on anything?
Yeah, a couple, Greg. I'm inferring from your last comments that the public are questioning UH's authority to execute a safety program on the mountain.
No. It's more that now that we have rules, especially now that we have rules, we actually have a duty to inform people of the rules as well as the dangers. So it's not that we haven't received anybody questioning.
Okay.
Well, I mean, some of that does occur just sort of naturally, but
Yeah, I'm aware anecdotally that going on.
yeah.
The other was, where do you stand with being able to actually issue citations for example, people driving two-wheel drive vehicles?
Yeah. So right now, the way it works is, as you know, the rangers man a soft gate, or they note, if they're not manning a soft gate, they note violations when they go up there, that when they encounter them. Right now, it's more of a warning process. The citation process is still needing to be finalized. There's issues with how people would pay their citations once they're cited. We have sample forms that we're going to be using to base our citation forms on, if you will. But it's really more a matter of setting up the back of house system to accommodate payment for citations, because some of the citations do come with a fee.
I'm sorry, Greg. So to clarify, you're talking about the UH actually doing the citation and not DLNR?
Yeah, so now that we have administrative rules, our rangers have enforcement authority to issue fines, citations that come with a fine for certain activities or violations. And so that's in addition to DOCARE.
And they can appeal those citations through these rules as well?
Yes, there's an appeal process in the rules. Any other questions?
Okay, if not, I was remiss in starting the meeting in mentioning at the start of the meeting that because of how the executive session was outlined on the agenda, it does not apply to this meeting. So we will not have an executive session per what was outlined on the agenda. What I do want to say is, should there be a need for executive session after the CSO decommissioning plan is presented, I can accept a motion from any of the board members, and as long as there's 3/4 approval of that motion, we can break into executive session, after the CSO presentation. If we don't feel we need it, we don't have to go into executive session. So that is the next agenda item. And we're ready to move to that if there aren't any other questions to Greg's report. So Greg, do you want to maybe summarize that memo that was just circulated before the
Sure.
meeting?
And I'm going to ask Carrie to let the PSI folks in, or the CSO folks in, because they do have a presentation that they're going to walk us through. I'll introduce them and then summarize where we're at with it. So Carrie, if you could let them in, please. Welcome.
Thank you.
So while the CSO team is dropping in, let me just do a little introduction here. And in the interest of time, rather than sort of formally going around and introducing everybody, I think we all can see each other's names. Let me just introduce the CSO team and then turn it over to Sunil and Jim. So Sunil Gowala is with Caltech, and he's the CSO director, observatory director, and heading his team that is working on the site decommissioning plan is Jim Hayes, which I know, who I know many of you have already met, and folks from their team. So as we know, when the notice of intent was first brought to this board way back when, one of the things that was noted that being the first one out of the chutes in terms of decommissioning, we wanted to make sure that this one was done correctly. And in an effort to do that and make sure, it has taken a bit of time to get to this point, but we do have a site decommissioning plan that is ready for review by this board. The memo that I sent out right before the meeting kind of provides a lot of the background on the work that they've been doing, and also updates us on where we stand relative to the Environment Committee's review and approval, as well as Kahu Kamana's review and approval of the site decommissioning plan. I know that Jim has a PowerPoint presentation that he'll walk us through that highlights certain aspects, areas of the site decommissioning plan, and then we can open it up for questions. But let me first turn it over to Sunil, Director of CSO. And Sunil, you can make some opening comments here.
All right, thanks, Greg. Yeah, I'll just say a few words and then hand it over to Jim. So first of all, thank you all for participating in this review of the CSO's site decommissioning plan. And I know you probably put in many, many hours reading the document. It's extensive. So let me just go around and introduce the team. So as Greg mentioned, Jim Hayes and Julia Tashima from Planning Solutions have been leading the development of the SDP, and then also Jim is in charge of the EA and the CDUA. Also McKenna White and on his team has done a lot of the detailed work on it. We also have Tom Sofer from Caltech. He's also a faculty member at Caltech with a lot of experience in Hawaii via Keck and TMT. Steve Daw from M3 is our project manager. And then we have Dana Butler from Hastings and Pleadwell, who are leading our community outreach efforts, all attending today. Let me also acknowledge the efforts of Peter Young of Ho'okuleana, who I'm sure many of you know. He played a significant role in the early community outreach and in early drafts of the SDP and the EA. So I'll note that the SDP and the whole decommissioning planning process has been, and it continues to be, a joint project of Caltech and CMS/OMKM. So many of the staff there, particularly Fritz Klasner, Stephanie Nagata, Greg himself, and many other staff members have played a big role in developing this plan, as well as the advisory committees. So as Greg noted, it's taken a long time to get, not a long time, some time to get to this point. And there's been a good deal of learning along the way, but I and the team feel we've prepared an SDP that really takes to heart the goals of the Mauna Kea Comprehensive Management Plan and the decommissioning subplan, as well as the broader context for the management of Mauna Kea, a topic that's of broad and deep interest, especially in recent years. We understand, as Greg mentioned, the important role that the CSO plays as the first observatory to undertake decommissioning, and that our work is not going to serve not just as an example, but really a template for the future decommissioning. So we think that the plan we're outlining here will lay the groundwork for both a demonstration that an observatory can be decommissioned and completely removed, and the site can be fully restored with no permanent physical or biological impact. So we believe our approach and intent take fully to heart the saying, when you leave, return it as you found it, mitigating as best as we can the cultural impact of the observatory, as well as its physical impact. So with that, let me hand it off to Jim, who's going to make the presentation.
All right, thanks, Sunil. And Julia is the one sharing her screen, so we're going to tell her to advance to the next slide. And we'll walk through our presentation. And we'll try to do this quickly in the interest of time so that we can get to questions and answers. The decommissioning plan establishes the requirement that each observatory prepare a site decommissioning plan that documents the conditions of the site, outlines the decommissioning approach, and proposes a plan for site restoration, and breaks it out into these 4 plans we have listed here. And we're going to review each of those as we go through these slides. So next slide. The first one being the notice of intent. This is discussed in Chapter 2 of the site decommissioning plan as an attached to the decommissioning plan as Appendix A. And it was approved some time ago and has not been modified since its approval. So there's really no need to go back to that, but just understand that all the other aspects of this plan are remaining consistent with that notice of intent. So next slide. That intent being, as Sunil mentioned, complete removal and full restoration. And these 2 photographs show on the left the facility photograph taken from a nearby historic property, and then on the right a rendering of what it will look like once the observatory is decommissioned. So next slide. The second part of the site decommissioning plan is the environmental due diligence, and some of this has been completed. The phase 1 identified a recognized environmental condition, and that being a hydraulic oil residue below the telescope and slab foundation. And that residue is a result of a spill that was reported to the Department of Health in 2009, and possibly prior spills during the construction of the CSO. And what we've done now is prepare a phase 2 sampling and analysis plan, which is how we should proceed as laid out in the decommissioning plan. This sampling analysis plan has 2 objectives. First, to assess whether the contaminants associated with that hydraulic fluid are still present in the soils beneath the slab. And second, to assess the conditions beneath the CSO cesspool. And when it comes to the cesspool, we'll be analyzing the samples collected there for a wide range of potential contaminants, including those potentially associated with film processing sites, because this is a request that was brought up during our scoping process. So we will be doing that. And I'll just note, as I say that film processing was never conducted at CSO, but out of an abundance of caution, we will look for those things. It'll take roughly 2 weeks for the samples to be analyzed once they're collected. And then a phase 2 report will summarize any remaining human health or ecological risks associated with what we encounter, if anything, hopefully nothing. To the degree possible, the deconstruction sequence will be managed so that we can collect our samples after we remove the slabs, and then continue other deconstruction efforts while we wait for the results. And that will eliminate or reduce the downtime of the process. So next slide. We get into the site deconstruction and removal plan, and this is in chapter 5 of the site decommissioning plan, and looks at, on high-level tasks, the demolition of the improvements, the grading of the site, the stockpiling of fill material, and then waste recovery, reuse, and disposal operations. The plan itself breaks these further down into 15 steps that will be conducted as the facilities are removed. Now, the decommissioning plan stipulates that this effort, the deconstruction and removal plan, also have a cost-benefit analysis and a schedule. So in the schedule, we've estimated that it'll take 141 days to complete the deconstruction, removal, and restoration activities. And that estimate of working days accounts for the difficult working conditions up in the Summit region. When it comes to the cost-benefit analysis, we're going to talk about that a little later. It's in a separate chapter of the decommissioning plan because it has components both related to the deconstruction and the restoration. So next slide, please. The plan, again, consistent with Caltech's intent for complete removal. And you see these same photographs again. So complete removal, of course, involves all underground facilities and all above ground facilities within the CSO site. So next slide. Applicable to all the work that's done will be best management practices and monitoring. These are discussed in section 5.1.1 of the plan. All general contractors, subcontractors, and suppliers will be required to adhere to these BMPs, permit conditions, and applicable rules and regulations. The BMPs and monitoring will comply with the comprehensive management plan and specifically management actions C1 through C9 from the CMP. And we have some topics listed here under the BMPs of some of those efforts. And then in the monitoring, we'll have the decommissioning manager as an independent of the general contractor selected by CMS. There'll be an archaeological monitor that will conduct monitoring per an archaeological monitoring plan approved by the State Historic Preservation Division. So they'll be present during any ground altering activities. There'll be a construction monitor that's also present during ground altering activities and potentially others. And there'll be an invasive species monitor that will monthly survey the site for non-native species and also inspect vehicles and any materials as they are brought into the UH management area. So next slide. We have here photographs of and aerial photographs of the site as it is today. It consists of the telescope, which is a 10.4 meter diameter radio telescope, and altogether that telescope weighs about 43 tons when you look at the dish and the structure that supports it. Then you have the dome, which is approximately 60 feet in diameter and 52 feet high. That weighs another roughly 150 tons. And then you have the foundation, sidewalks around it, you know, that whole area that you can see in the aerial photograph right around the dome itself. Then you have the outbuilding slightly to the north, and adjacent to the outbuilding, transformers, an electrical generator. Underground, there's a water tank, a cesspool, utilities, a grounding grid, and then of course on the ground surface you have the parking area. And the removal of all of these items from the Summit region is expected to require 70 large truckloads. So next slide. When we talk about the CSO site, we're talking about this area that's outlined in red here. It's about 1.3 acres, and it includes the entire subleased area, which is shown in black. And then, of course, it includes all the improvements around there. So it includes these areas that were disturbed during the original construction. So for the driveway and the utilities and grading, and also any areas that will be disturbed during the decommissioning process. Now, there are no areas that will be disturbed during decommissioning that were not disturbed during construction, as far as we know. And then the shared facilities, I'll point out in this drawing, you'll see the green and sort of purplish lines that are parallel the dirt road running across the figure. And those are shared utilities, and they will not be removed. So those are the only things that are in the UH or on the CSO site that will not be removed because they're also aiding the other observatories in the summit region. All right, next slide. So during the decommissioning, we'll have some equipment there, the 45-ton crane, as well as trucks and containers for the waste that's generated. So the crane will be taking things apart and loading them in to those containers. And there'll be, just sort of minor things like a portable lua there on the site. And the site will be surrounded by a fence to manage access and keep everybody safe. And that fence is shown in the black line. And then the red line is a different fence. That will be an expanded fenced area that's implemented once we move into the site restoration portion of the work. All right, next slide. This is a graphic that shows both pre-construction and post-construction topographic lines. And we use those surveys to assess what the conditions are at the site and discover that there's about 2,800 cubic yards of material that were placed on the site during construction. And we consider this fill material. We did an analysis of that material and discovered that it is from the summit region. So it's native material, but it's been moved around. It's been, compacted and used in various ways over the years. The maximum depth of this fill material is about 10 feet, and that's on the downhill or sort of right side of this graphic. The deepest foundation under the telescope is about 4 feet, and therefore entirely within that fill material. And then the cesspool, that's about 13.5 feet below grade. So the upper 10 feet or upper 9 feet of it are in fill material. And then the lower, 4.5 feet or so extend into the native material. All right, so next slide, please. This shows other areas that will be utilized in the summit region during deconstruction. So all that fill material we were just talking about will be removed from the CSO site and transported by the route shown by this red line over to the batch plant. And it'll be placed in the batch plant in that location and stored there for future use. Also in the batch plant is that construction staging area. So it'll be office trailer and other areas that are utilized by the contractor there. Now, I'll just point out that all movement between the batch plant and the construction site or the deconstruction site will be via the paved roadway. We're not going to utilize that unpaved road, that old road that connects the batch plant and the CSO site. All right, next slide, please. This shows the CSO foundation as it's being built. The CSO does not have a basement level. It's all slab on grade. It's a reinforced concrete, and it'll be broken up or cut and removed from the ground and replaced in those bins that'll be in the driveway area. And then the portion of the grounding grid near the foundation will be removed as well. So next slide, please. This shows a cross section of that foundation and how the foundation thickness varies, but it's never too thick. And like I said earlier, it does not extend into the native lava flow beneath. Now the telescope pier, which is shown on the right, the thicker area, is not structurally connected to the dome foundation, which is in the middle of this drawing. And it was reported that there was a drain through the foundation, but we've not encountered it recently. It may have been plugged in 2009 when that hydraulic fluid release occurred. Now, as we're removing all of these facilities, the contractor will try to locate that drain so that as they break the foundation, they know where the most likely location is that any hydraulic fluid release may have entered the subsurface, and be able to, prioritize examining the conditions in that location. And then, of course, following the removal of the foundation, we will implement that phase 2 sampling and analysis plan and look for and address any hydraulic fluid impact encountered. All right, next slide. So the cesspool we mentioned earlier will be closed in compliance with Department of Health guidance. That will involve pumping out remaining sludge, if any, testing and disposing of that sludge properly, trenching around the outer perimeter of the cesspool, and then removing the concrete structure and disposing of that properly. Then sampling and testing the soil around the cesspool as laid out in the phase 2 sampling and analysis plan. And then, assuming everything looks good, using the fill material on the CSO site to fill the void so that it's even with the depth of the surrounding native lava flow. All right, next slide. Moving into the site restoration plan, the purpose of this plan is to present specific targets for site restoration and describe the methods for restoring the disturbed areas. Now, of course, our plan is unique to our site, and it considers the cultural, biological, and physical aspects of the site, and is laid out in Chapter 7 of the decommissioning plan. All right, next slide. This photo shows the area as it appeared in the early 1980s prior to construction. And this is it looks different now for other reasons as well. There are additional observatories there and the road has been moved. But our goal is to, fully restore the site so it looks something like this. And the decommissioning plan outlines 3 levels of restoration, and we considered all of them. The 3 levels are minimal, moderate, and full. And I mentioned the cost benefit analysis earlier. We were working on that and considered the cost for each of these alternatives and found that the cost differences are very small. Complete removal and full restoration provides the greater environmental, biological, and cultural benefits than the other alternatives. So while the level of benefit between the alternatives may not be assessed in terms of cost, in terms of price or schedule or risk, now there's strong support in the laws of the state for the protection of the valuable public trust resources. So in the absence of a clear cost difference between these alternatives, the benefits are the most relevant factor. And our analysis indicates that the intent of complete removal and full restoration provides the best balance of cost and benefits because it has the higher level of benefit associated with it. So thus, we will employ that full benefit of full restoration, and that'll involve removing all that fill, as we mentioned earlier, stockpiling it in the batch plant, saving a portion of that material and sort of sifting through it so we have fine ash and small rocks that are consistent with the size of material that's typically present on these native lava flows. And then placing that material back on the substrate that's underneath all that fill material so that it has both a natural visual appearance to it and provides the niche habitat for the native species of plants and arthropods so that they can recolonize the site gradually. All right, next slide, please. So here we have a couple photos, and on the left is what the site looks like today, looking at the parking area. In the middle is what we kind of think it would look like if we only did the moderate level of restoration. And there on the right is what we hope it will look like when we do the full level of restoration. And of course, that full level of restoration being our preferred alternative. All right, next slide. So this is a blow up of that slide or that photograph on the right. It shows a lava flow in the Maunakea environment. Now, we don't think that the moment we walk away from the site that it'll look exactly like this. However, given a period of naturalization, it's anticipated that the ground surface will resemble this natural state and will provide an alpine stone desert ecosystem habitat. So that's our goal. And I was mentioning earlier having that fine ash and small stones. And you can see that in this photograph, sort of where it's not the hard lava, you can see the small stones and ash material in sort of the depressions of the lava flow. And that's the look that we'll be aiming for as best we can. All right, next slide. We've mentioned our cost benefit analysis, and there's just some of the numbers associated with that. And as I mentioned, there's relatively modest difference between the costs when we look at just the monetary cost and the schedule between complete removal and full restoration versus infrastructure capping and moderate restoration. And then of course, with the benefits side, we see that the benefits vary, that the complete removal and full restoration provide the maximum benefit, but it's hard to place a value on those benefits. But Caltax believes that the diminishment in benefit value of the lesser alternative, the capping and moderate restoration, would exceed the reduced cost value associated, based on the input that we've received. Therefore, we've confirmed our intent, and that remains complete removal and full restoration. All right, next slide. One of the aspects of the project is once we have completed the restoration, we'll do an effectiveness monitoring for a period of 3 years. Photographs here show the different kinds of arthropod traps that are used to assess conditions at a site for both invasive species and native species. So for those 3 years, we'll do one event in the summer per year, and then we will provide annual and final reports and be working with the Center for Maunakea Stewardship as we work on these monitoring efforts. The outcome of this monitoring will hopefully inform future restoration projects in the Summit region. All right, next slide, please. Spoke earlier about shared infrastructure. This figure that was prepared by the University of Hawaii shows that shared infrastructure. Caltech would provide funds to the UH for the future decommissioning of the shared infrastructure based on a weighted pro rata share of the facilities it has utilized. Now, Caltech is in the one corner here, and it didn't utilize all of these shared facilities. We have listed here like the red line, the white line, purple line, portions of the other lines. So altogether, it's estimated that CSO's pro rata share is just over $500,000. And so part of the project, as detailed in the decommissioning plan, is that Caltech will provide that sum to the university, well, a sum that's inflated relative to any kind of cost increases when it relinquishes sublease. All right, next slide, please. Quick look at our next steps and target schedule. On the top row here, we've been involved in this for some time, working with the Environmental Committee, Kahukumana Council, and now you on the Maunakea Management Board. In the future, we'll bring to you a draft environmental assessment and conservation district use application. As Greg mentioned earlier, the people at UH are already reviewing the internal early draft of those documents. We hope to have them to this board in May, and then being considered by the Department of Land and Natural Resources starting soon after, so that there'll be a public review period of the draft EA in August and/or September. Then the Board of Land and Natural Resources considering and hopefully awarding a permit in December or early 2022. Assuming that all goes as planned, it'll allow Caltech to commence the decommissioning in the spring or summer of 2022 and complete the restoration before the end of 2022. And then the restoration monitoring following the 3 years after that. All right, next slide. I'll turn it back to Sunil and wrap this up.
Right, so I just wanted to describe, three of the biggest contributions that the CSO made by, in the process of opening new windows on the universe along with the JCMT. It really opened the submillimeter window. So much of what one studies in the submillimeter is the chemistry of gas in our galaxy, and that's the raw material out of which stars and planets are born. So understanding that chemistry is quite important for understanding our own origins. On the right is a remarkable image of a debris disk left over after a planetary system forms around a star, and that was taken using the CSO. And the little cartoon on the left is showing an idea of what the star and that planet might look like, and then the red is the debris that's left over that we see bright in the submillimeter. So again, seeing the origins of the kinds of celestial bodies that even we are on. And then CSO played a very big role in the development of numerous technologies that later ended up in major ground-based observatories and major space-based observatories. So we've benefited greatly from the site, and we think that we've returned that investment with new knowledge and new technologies that have opened up new eyes on the universe. All right, next slide. All right, Jim, take over, or should I finish up here?
You can finish up, Sunil. That's
okay.
Be great.
All right, so as we said at the start, we believe the site decommissioning plan, which states every effort will be made to fully restore the site, reflects Caltech's continued commitment to Malama, the CSO site in Mauna Kea. So we thank you, the Maunakea Management Board, Kahukumana, and Kanaka Maioli for the privilege of CSO's time on Mauna Kea. We thank Mauna Kea and will honor it and those in its geology by carefully implementing this decommissioning and fully restoring the site. I think that's it.
Yes.
Okay, so we open it up for questions.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Thank you, Sunil and Jim. Questions from Maunakea Management Board?
Just one. Thank you very much for the presentation. That was great. I do have a question with regards to the, you said the material that came from the summit is part of the base and that you're going to use some of that to refill the cesspool. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
And the rest of it will remain in that that plat site you mentioned?
The batch plant, yes.
Yeah.
So there's roughly 2,800 cubic yards of material, that's that fill material. And we did well, not me, but consultants did an analysis of the fill material and also analyzed nearby native material on Mauna Kea. And through that analysis, looking at the composition, elemental compositions, they reasoned that that fill material was likely generated when the road was being constructed
Got it.
The road was being widened. So it's material that's native to the summit region.
Have any arthropods been found, or especially the vacuum bugs, since as long as Caltech has been there, or have there been an arthropod study to see if there are any there before you guys do the removal?
Yes. So as part of our studies, we did a thorough biological assessment of the site and included looking for arthropods, including vacuum bugs. And we didn't find any. This area, like it's more of a lava flow habitat instead of a cinder habitat. And that lava flow habitat is not conducive to vacuum bugs. They're typically not found in that habitat. So even after we do the site restoration, it's not anticipated that vacuum bugs will move into that habitat.
Yeah, I concur. I was just curious if you guys found anything. So thank you very much. That's all I have for questions.
Thank you.
Jim, I have a question. So you mentioned monitoring and you had those 4 pictures. What in particular are you going to be monitoring?
Yeah, so we've been working with, this is on slide 22. We've been working with Jessica Kirkpatrick to think about how this plan will be laid out. And it includes like transecting the property, transecting the site, and looking for flora and fauna, and then using these kind of traps at designated locations that kind of capture the diversity of habitat on the site. I mean, there's not going to be a lot of diversity, but there'll be some diversity of habitat on the site. And so doing that in a fashion that's reproducible and can be analyzed for, how effective we have been, and then used to inform future restoration is our goal. And the detailed plan, like I said, we've been working with Jessica and others on that, and it will appear as an appendix to the environmental assessment that you receive in May or so.
Thank you.
So Jessica Kirkpatrick from our CMS staff is also online as a panelist. I don't know, Jessica, if you want to weigh in on Julie's question at all.
Her chat said she thought we were doing a good job of explaining it.
Yeah, I think Jim did a great job explaining that. If you have any other specific questions, I can answer that for you.
Okay. Other questions?
Greg, I got a few.
Yeah. Go ahead.
First of all, I want to say that I thought the report was well written. It's a long report, it's a lot to get through. I focused on the first 100 pages or so, and not so much the back part, but I felt like I understood what you guys are going to try to do pretty well based upon the report alone. So I thought you did a good job overall. And some of my questions are sort of derivatives of the report, not necessarily directly about the report. Let's see, amongst them, in terms of schedule, this in principle goes out for a permit for the land board at the end of this year. Is that a point at which a contested case could be launched?
Yes, it is. Any award of a permit is a potentially contestable.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So have you thought about the implications overall to the project in the event you get kind of bogged down in a lengthy contested case dispute?
No, I wouldn't say we have. We're hoping that doesn't come to pass. But if the permit is delayed due to a contested case, we'll just have to do our best to get through it.
Okay. Let's see, another one. and this may be for M3. I assume M3 took the lead in developing the cost estimates
Yes.
for the deconstruction activity. And I was wondering, what was the basis of the estimation for the costs?
So the cost is based upon our review of the existing drawings and the material takeoffs for the steel, the skin, everything, and also including our past experience in working on top of remote summit regions and the time it takes and the scheduling that it takes to do that. So our schedule and costs are based upon our past experience and the material takeoffs that we have from the existing drawings.
Okay, so to be clear, you didn't actually consult with local contractors to get an estimate from them?
No, we did not for this early estimate, not for the conceptual.
Okay. I thought that the cost was reasonable based upon at least the anecdotal understanding I have for other telescopes on the mountain to decommission. So it seemed in the right ballpark. And I also thought the 30% contingency was right as well. So I think we had it just fine. Let's see, the next one I had is maybe more for UH. And it's a bit nuanced, but for me, one of the more important points of the report. There are shared infrastructure decommissioning costs, and I think it's like $500,000 in the budget is allocated for that. And this is a really important precedent in a lot of ways because it implies a formula to be applied to all the other observatories and cost sharing in the future. And I'm wondering if somebody can provide me some explanation for the process of coming up with $500,000, your confidence in that, and perhaps more importantly, the university's willingness to take on the risk in the event that cost is below what is ultimately needed to conduct that work, and it may not be done for many decades out.
I think maybe Steve or Jim could speak to the actual methodology more, but in terms of university's willingness to take on the risk, as you know, Doug, I mean, I don't think we have a choice. We try to mitigate it as best by building in some escalation factors and whatever, but it's just something that reflects the current situation. Having said that, there have been preliminary discussions with DLNR that some of those, if we got to a point where everything had to be removed, decommissioned and removed, some of that infrastructure may actually have a public purpose, and that the state may actually prefer that those stay. For example, the roads and maybe some of the utilities. What that is uncertain. If they would, if that's what they wanted.
Okay, so the $500,000 was, the cost was derived in the same way, I guess, by M3 as the rest of the deconstruction. Is that right?
The $500,000 was not our estimate, no.
Oh, okay. Where did that come from?
It came from Maunakea, I believe.
Yeah, they came from Stephanie and Fritz.
So that's the report the MKO saw late last year?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I guess at some point, and this is more of an offline discussion, when we get into master lease terms and things of that sort, clarifying and ensuring that the university's willing to take on that long-term risk, I think is something needs to be understood. I think in general, the observatories like CSO would like to remove themselves of that risk as they, in some succession, are decommissioned, as opposed to wait around for decades potentially and figure out how to divvy up the cost later on. So it's a new one. The observatories are struggling with it as well. In none of our subleases is this cost mentioned, but it's a obviously a future one in terms of shared infrastructure interests, so to speak. So all new turf, I think, for everybody around. That's why I'm probing as to where the number came from, UH's willingness to pick up the tab in case it isn't enough money, and how we ultimately kind of nail down who's responsible for what in a future master and set of subleases. Let's see, outside of that, I thought it was overall a good proposal. Happy to see it. I hope we don't get delayed with a contested case. Between that and winter weather, are there other sort of significant scheduled delays beyond the control of the project that you foresee?
Not that we foresee, no. I mentioned earlier the work related to the sampling and analysis plan. We'll work carefully to try to set things up so that those don't delay our efforts. But there will be some time to evaluate those laboratory results from the soil samples. But that'll be built into our optimized schedule.
Okay.
Or perhaps we should add that, you know, we include the other two alternatives of moderate restoration and then moderate restoration with infrastructure capping if something unforeseen is discovered in the process of decommissioning. We don't anticipate that, but we do describe those options in the plan for that reason.
Yeah, I fully got that, and it's prudent to put that in your planning. The net impact is pretty negligible in the grand scheme of things in terms of cost and schedule, I think, though.
So Doug, I have a follow-up question for you. I mean, obviously, what we're trying to achieve here collectively is, I would hope it would be seen as a positive thing, decommissioning an observatory. But I know you've had extensive conversations on your own, just with community members on a variety of things related to astronomy on Mauna Kea. You have a sense of what the basis of seeking a contested case for a permit where we're trying to do something that we think is positive might be?
I don't have any particular insight or concern. I'm, at some level, anytime there's an opportunity for a contested case on Mauna Kea seems to be utilized. I could at least imagine concerns about environmental impact of what is a lot of trucks going up and down, and you're going to use the batch plant and things of that sort. I would like to think that people would view this as for the best interest of Mauna Kea in the long term. And there's a near term quote price to be paid in terms of all the activity, but you just never know, Greg. That's why I flagged it. I was trying to think, what could slow this down that's beyond the control of the project. And
right.
Weather and some sort of litigation were the two things that came to mind.
Okay.
So I can comment on that a little bit.
Okay.
And there was this letter sent to the governor in 2018 by opponents of TMT that argued that an EIS should be required. We hired a local law firm to analyze that question, and they looked carefully at it, and they concluded that an EA is sufficient for this type of activity. So we've tried to head off that question carefully, but as Doug said, it's possible that there still may be a contested case.
Sure. Okay.
I also had another follow-up question to this comment about contested case. So if there is a delay by 2 to 3 years, and obviously costs just keep going up, not down, who's responsible for the differential, if there is one?
For the deconstruction or for the shared infrastructure?
So if you have a contested case and it causes a 2-year delay on the start of the decommissioning and costs rise, I guess my question was, is that going to be CSO's responsibility, or the university?
As far as I know, it's CSO's responsibility. At least that's the way we look at it. So we certainly hope that that does not happen.
Yeah, I'm hopeful as well.
Our prior statements regarding, Caltech's financial responsibility for the decommissioning don't include any time horizons. So I think it's reasonable to state that we would remain responsible.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Any more questions? Does the board feel comfortable that it is in a position to vote, or does anybody feel there is a request for executive session? Please let me know now. If there is, we will need a 3/4 member approval to move into executive session.
Failing that, Roberta, I'll make a motion to move to vote on approval.
Yeah, I second.
Thank you. So Doug moved, Julie second, to approve the decommissioning report as presented. Is there any further discussion? If not, I'm going to call for the vote. All those in favor of approving the decommissioning plan, please say aye. Raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Unanimous. Oh, hi,
Yeah,
Kim.
he's here.
All right. Let's see. Thank you very much, CSO, for all the work that you have done to prepare the report. I know it really is a challenge when you're the first, but I think, the amount of work that you put in is really going to help for future decommissioning plans. So thank you very much.
All right. Well, you're welcome, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Sunil, Jim, team. Really appreciate it.
I also thank you for all of your scientific knowledge to the community as a whole. Thank you very much.
Good job.
All right.
Okay. All right. Well, then I guess we'll leave. Thank you very much.
Yep, you guys can leave. Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Thank you all.
Okay. Are there, I guess the announcement that I wanted to make was to remind everyone that this Thursday, so in 2 days, we have the Maunakea Management Board and Kahuku joint meeting at 5 o'clock. Anything else, Greg? Any other announcements?
No, but thank you for reminding everyone about the meeting on Thursday. So that is a follow. That's the discussion that we've been wanting to have with Kahuku on community engagement and how we proceed to address that.
Yes, Dan, you're mute. Yeah. You can press the space bar on your computer. No, not yet. Can you press the space bar? No.
There
you go.
that. Okay. Are we going to go into executive session to follow up on the discussion that we had in the special meeting the last time?
No.
when are we going to do that next?
For the community engagement piece.
Yes,
Yes.
I'd like us to finish that. So when are we going to do that next?
Okay, well, what I'm hoping is that by having the joint MKMB and Kahukumana board meeting, that will help with, more understanding between both groups, but sharing ideas. If at that meeting, go ahead.
I do want to follow up with the work that I was charged to do because I have had that discussion and I would like to follow it up with our board.
Okay.
So my understanding was that we would do that. So I would like to make certain that we get on an agenda and that we continue and finish that discussion. I would think that we could meet with Kahukumana. That's wonderful that we are, but I do want to finish what we had discussed in our executive session.
Okay. Well, I think you had also mentioned about having a discussion with Keahi. And right, so I don't know if that's taken place or not, but
Taking place, that's what I'm talking about.
okay. Well, I think you can meet with him to understand maybe some of what he would, recommend.
But-
We've done that.
Oh,
We've
you've done
done that.
Yeah.
We'd like to be able to talk with the board.
So what we can do here, Roberta, is by 3/4 or majority of the board, we can amend the agenda here to go into an executive session. Is that correct, Gary?
Yeah, you can amend the agenda provided it meets those statutory requirements.
Okay.
Matter of not of major significance that affects a great number of people. If you're comfortable with that analysis, then it is possible with a sufficient vote to amend your agenda, add that item, and then move to go into exec session.
So
I'll
I
make that
would,
motion.
okay, I'll second it.
Diana moved for the board to go into executive session to continue our discussion on community engagement, as was referenced in the report by Don Chang. And Greg Chun has seconded. Any further discussion?
Nope.
All in favor?
Sorry, Chair, Gary here. Just to be precise, the motion should reference the basis for the exec session, which besides what you said, I take it from what I'm hearing would be to consult with counsel, which is one of the bases for exec session. Just want to be clear on that.
Yeah, to consult with counsel on our roles and responsibilities as it relates to community engagement.
Yeah, that was my understanding. Thank you.
Okay.
So just to confirm, Diana, you're comfortable that that was your motion?
Yes.
Okay, Greg has second. All in favor, say aye and raise your hand because we need
Aye.
3/4.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we have a unanimous vote. So we will now break into exec session.
Sorry, Chair. Sorry to interrupt. So I think just the step-by-step approach here is the motion to amend the agenda to add this exec session.
Okay.
I think that was the pending motion. Once the agenda is amended, I believe you can then take the motion to actually go into the executive session.
All right, so we need to backtrack, and Diana, will you amend your motion to?
Amend the agenda.
Yes, amend the agenda first.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 So the agenda has been amended. And now I can take the motion for the executive session.
I move that we go into executive session.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, we will now break for executive session. Is that procedurally correct, Gary?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so there is another separate link that Carrie had sent, so please move to that
So we leave this meeting and we go to the other one.
one.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Thank you all.
In a bit, yeah.
It looks like we're all alone, Roberta. Everybody else left the meeting.
Doug, are you and I talking tomorrow? I never saw a Zoom link.
Yes, we are. Hang on a second.
Okay, there's Diana.
I got you down for 10 o'clock.
Right, right.
Do you want me to resend the Zoom?
Yeah, did Patty send it? Yeah, could you resend it? Yeah, I probably missed it. Sorry.
Yeah, it's only us.
Okay.
But I'm waiting for Billy. And I don't know if Bonnie's gonna come back on.
Yeah, she might not.
Oh, there's Billy.
There's Billy.
Okay, great. So I am reconvening the public meeting, and I'm reporting that we had discussion on community engagement. There'll be more discussion. There was, nothing that we will be discussing back here now in the public forum. So are there any other announcements? I think, Greg, we just talked about.
Yeah, the only other announcement I have is I had my first shot today. I encourage everybody to make sure you get your shots if you are able to. It was a very organized experience here in Kona, but interesting. But please go get your shot.
Did you go to Kona Hospital or West?
No, Department of Health had their thing set up at the swimming pool.
Oh, okay.
And it was actually quite an organized event. I mean, I didn't expect it. I thought you have an appointment and you show up and that's it, but it wasn't like that at all.
Yeah, you have to wait. I think they want to see if you react. If you have reaction, right?
It's like they have probably 50 people that they sign up for the same time. So you all arrive at the same time, and then it's choreographed thing. So
I'm hoping to get mine when I get back.
good.
Been trying on a wait list.
Good.
Well, I think we all have to wait until they let us get in, right? So
yeah.
Yeah, I'm on a UH list, so I was able to get in.
Yeah.
that's good.
They actually added me to the Bank of Hawaii list since I'm consulting for them. So financial institutions were put on the essential workers list.
I think astronomers are at the end of the list.
Huh?
I think astronomers are at the end of the list. Pretty useless.
Sorry, we're really digressing. So now 7:30, and I do not see any other announcements or issues for us to discuss. So I am going to adjourn the meeting. Thank you everyone for attending, and reminder, I'll see you all on Thursday, day after tomorrow, for the meeting with Kahukumana.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All.
Aloha.
Thanks, Gary, and thanks, Jesse.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.